Where'd you go if you need a Roger? Well, you go to Roger the Club, in the third oldest city in the world. Yes, let's go and get Rogered in Matera. Now, Matera has been around for about 9,000 years, and until 1960, when a book, Christ Stops at Ebola, was written, it was known as the Shame of Italy. However, once that book came out, the Italian government chucked everyone outside of their cave houses and put them in new accommodation, leaving the place, well, to ruins for some time. But who wrote this book which encouraged everyone to leave their house so it could turn into a tourist destination? Well, it's Carlo Levi, and yes, you don't need to look that one up. But before we get to the south of Italy, where people used to live 8 people to a cave along with a donkey to keep warm, we need to have a drink to keep ourselves warm, because don't forget, it's still March in the UK. And here's this lovely tower of wine, which is at least 50 yards away from Stansted Airport. Nice. Very expensive, but nice. Now, of course, when you go into one of the most luxurious places in the world and one of the oldest, it's important that you fly luxury too. But we didn't, we went on Ryanair, which isn't luxury, and unfortunately it had one of them on the plane as well. Thankfully he wasn't flying it, because he was asleep. Not that it'd make any difference if he was awake. There's no diversity hires on Ryanair. Which is good really, because I don't want to crash into these Alps. What a lovely view from the plane. After landing in Bari, what do you notice about this scene where people are calmly just walking around waiting for their baggage? It's also the same outside the airport, where there's a noticeable lack of a certain kind of people trying to get you in their taxis. Lovely. But we don't need a taxi because I'm going to be the taxi driver. Mrs. St. Harrison trying to check out the petrol cap there. This will be fun. Driving in the south of Italy, where people don't follow the rules of the road because there are none. And when we arrived to Bari in the centre, we couldn't work out the ticket machine, and neither could these people. Because you need cash and not card, which thankfully in 25 degrees heat and a jumper on, I managed to get. Then we took a quick stop at Bari train station. How very tropical, excuse the clouds, where there's this lovely fountain in front. I wonder what that's in remembrance of. Is it the people who built the city? No, it's in memory of a train crash. How pleasant. Now, as we know, stickers can get you in trouble, and this sticker that we found looks like it could get you in a lot of trouble. He looks familiar. Now, after an hour's drive of trying not to die and remembering to stay on the right side of the road, we finally reached Matera. Well, this isn't the centre of Matera because that's expensive to park. There's Mrs. Harrison, glad she's out of the car. So we had to walk all the way down the hill with the suitcases before we stopped on our first view of the oldest city. Well, third oldest city. It's the oldest city in Europe, that's all that counts. Now, if you do visit Matera, I highly recommend A, not taking a suitcase, and B, trying to find a direct route to the hotel before you have to walk down thousands of stairs, when afterwards you realise all you had to do was walk down a flat road. Interestingly, this flat road used to be a stream where they put all the rubbish. Oh, mind me steps. Now, of course, when you're staying in a cave city, it's only natural you're going to stay in a cave. There's no normal hotels here, but this is far better. This is 9,000 years old and once had, as I said before, donkeys and families in it. Instead, now it's just got St. Harrison and Mrs. St. Harrison, who's pissing about over there, trying to find some plugs. You don't get plugs in caves. And thankfully, the days of shitting in a hole are over. After a little rest, it was time to take in the surroundings being more of the old city, and across the other side of the canyon, some old caves. We'll go up there another day and have a look. Where's she off to? She's found a cat. Pardon? Come then, come with us. Come then. Come on. Now you can't turn a corner without running into a cat here, but at the top of this corner is a lovely bar made in the rock. Just what you need after a long day's driving, flying and hiking up some stairs. Now one thing the south of Italy is known for is good food and cheap food. So on this rather cold evening, which is why there's a lamp, it was time for a €15 plate of meat. You wouldn't get that for 13 quid here. But of course Mrs. Harrison went for the lady option of pasta. Now of course, who else likes meat and pasta? Of course, it's the cats. You lazy bastard. There you go. I'd almost finished and I was quite stuffed. Luckily, there was someone else there to help. Her sister. But of course you can't end an evening with Italy without some entertainment. But of course you need to put €2 in them to start them up. Mucky sod. We saw them every night that we were there. What a lovely way to start the day, getting woken up by the sound of birds chirping away inside your walls. Nice. Although I do feel like I'm being watched by more than just the birds. Now you may be wondering, how do you get over to the other side of the canyon? Well, if you head down some steps, because there's a lot of steps, you'll reach a rope bridge. I think we'll be doing that another day. Not today, I'm still knackered after carrying the suitcase down the road yesterday. Plus it looks closed. Oh well, next time. Now this is the Church of Madonna del Virtue and San Nicola de Greci. Now there is a crypt, which is down there, which connects the monastery to the Church of Madonna del Virtue, and it is a little bit Eastern and Byzantine. There's a single nave for the faithful, and also a special perch for the nuns and the ladies, because they weren't allowed down with the commoners, well, the men, so they were either standing up there or they were standing up there, but that's been bricked up now. But don't worry, the women aren't bricked up behind. Now this is a nice tile artwork that was made, well, in the early 2000s. Don't worry, but it's still very nice. It's not like crap modern art. People all walking around doing hard work to make the place better, except for this bloke who's having a skive and having a piss. Nice. Now, as we were walking around outside the top of the church, we noticed someone was doing a banner drop on the other side of the canyon. Was it Free San Melia? Was it something about getting immigrants out? Whatever it was, he was having very trouble unfurling his banner. Maybe this helicopter is coming along to help him, or just pick him up because they're the police. But no, eventually he did unfurl his banner, and all it said was, "Fuck off." No context needed. Although it turns out it was directed at the Matera government. I wonder what that means. But anyway, back to the church, where we here have two empty graves, where the dead bodies have clearly taken upon that sign on the other side of the hill, telling them to fuck off. Now it's time to find another nice view. No, look, it's Mrs. Harrison with her sun hat on, something I didn't have. Wherever you were in Matera, you were always guaranteed a lovely vista. like this. Honestly, pictures don't do it justice, you have to go there. Anyway, at the top of this other set of stairs, we found this lovely church too. Out the way, son. Now, because it's a house of Lord, there are rules. The main rule being you're not allowed big dogs, and small dogs must be put in the lady's arse. Now, this is the Church of Santa Maria de Grazie, and also the Convent of San Agostino, a 16th century monastic complex, which was built by the monks of the Order of the Emeritus of St Augustine. Yeah, I tried to read that right. Open during Mass, it's open now, wasn't Mass. It features an 18th century organ and a painting of Madonna with the Child. Come on now, would you please take your foot off me? No. Now in this church, if you cross the priest's palm with silver, well, €2, he'll let you down into the crypt, with all the old paintings still somehow on the wall, although slightly faded, and all the old artefacts from the church. It's all very nice. That's enough churches for the time being. How did they make wine back then? Well, they would press on the grapes on top of here with their feet, and it would come out those little holes there. Now, back in the olden days, they used to get their water, pre-plumbing, from a massive cistern underneath the city. Well, lots of cisterns. So these places would be full with water, wine, and food. Not together, obviously. That's retarded. There's a cistern. Helpfully noted. It's empty now, bar a bit of water and a few coins. I didn't chuck any coins down there, we had to pay a couple of those to get in here. And here's the grain silo I was talking about, which would be sealed up at the top with a small flame, so everything would stay preserved for as long as they needed it. They were very clever back then, far more clever than the people of Africa today. Of course, right next to the cistern is another little church. It's a very quaint one. And here's Mrs. St Harrison trying to put €2 into Mary there to see if she starts talking or something. She doesn't. Because it's Easter, they're all getting prepared, so she'll be carried out in an Easter procession, which has probably just gone because it's not Easter anymore. But surely she's not going to be carried out on her own. Well, of course not. At the front is our man himself. Now, after all this walking around cisterns and churches, it's time for some holy water for ourselves. Yes, some Coca-Cola and a fag. Let's do some people watching. Hello, fatty! Now, this is the church of San Giovanni Battista. It's a Roman Catholic church that goes back to the 13th century and is dedicated to St John the Baptist. And, like the cathedral here, it is a Apulian Romanesque structure. Now, it is a lovely church where you can get some nice peace and quiet while you're lighting your electric powered candles, because they don't do the flame ones here, or whilst you hear a noisy African in the doorway. You can still hear the bastard outside. What a lovely church. Now, this is the Palazzo del Governo. Now, what are those things outside the windows? Oh dear. And next door is the Palambaro Lungo, which is the massive underground cistern, which is unfortunately closed when we got there, probably to keep them out. We also saw a lot of this because it was coming up to Easter. Christ on his cross being covered up, only to be uncovered come Sunday. Now, this is Matera Cathedral, which they started building in 1203 and finished in 1270. No mucking about. Art place for spazzes. Shit. Ah, this is a lovely painting. I wonder what's at the bottom of it. Oh my indeed. We're all children of God. Ceiling Jesus is watching you. It's an absolutely lovely cathedral, and like all the churches we saw in Venice, they can't just leave the ceilings alone either, as you're about to see. If there's a surface, paint on it. Why not? Do it the Italian way. But then it was time for some more Blood of Christ, and what a lovely view to have a couple of Aperol spritzes and some Winston Blue and a little snack. I'm not sure what that was, but it tasted nice. Now this ginger cat we ran into quite a lot sounded like he'd been possessed by the devil. Get into one of the churches. He was also quite greedy too whenever we were out eating. Now Matera looks just as good at night as it does in the day, when it's all lit up and there's no horrible glass buildings or annoying billboards making it look shit or Jewish. You know what I mean. We then ran into our possessed ginger friend again, who was eating a massive grasshopper. Nice. Enjoy. And at dinner time we ran into our other friend from yesterday. I bet you can't see her.
He's giving this cat evils.
Really? The next morning was a sunny and yet perilous drive to Albrabello. Now where do you park? You have to park in the white lines or you get fined. But at least I managed to park within the lines. Unlike this fella, or woman probably, opposite us. Oh dear. Now Albrabello is about an hour's drive from Matera. It's well known for its small unique houses called Trullo, or if there's lots of them, Truly. And the name Albrabello comes from the medieval Latin name of the region, Siva Arboris Belli, the wood of the war of the tree. And here's Mrs. St. Harrison thinking I'm taking her picture and not just making a video. There she is. So why do the houses look like this? Well, it's all to do with taxes, because if there's no permanent settlements, the taxes will lower, especially for the cunning Italian landowners. They're constructed from limestone, so the material could be dismantled and later reused to rebuild them once the tax collector is pissed off. Up until the 17th century, there were only a few dozen truly in the area, but after that, it massively increased. I wonder why. Oh, have a look at that symbol. I think we've seen that before. A happy windmill on a happy house. Now, it is a conservation area, but people do still live in the houses, but they gotta pay their taxes, and they can't knock them down and run off when the tax collector's on the way. And of course at the top of the hill there's a lovely church, which when we visited was extremely busy with Mystery Ming's family. Now is that Bill Aifling or the Woodlander? You decide. After another short drive we arrived to Polinaro Amari. Out on the coast, let's go and see the sea, where there's a statue of a man celebrating that he managed to find a parking space just like we did. Now for some reason everyone in South Italy goes out on a Sunday night rather than a Saturday night, which means this place was packed, but at least it's packed full of South Italians, and not, well, you know what. What a lovely place to have a drink next to a Romanesque church before we head down to the Ponte delle Pili, which is a nice little cove, which is very popular with Instagrammers. You'll see why. The Romans built this, you'll be absolutely shocked to learn. Well, you won't be. Now this is a very famous beach. Even though it is covered in stones, it is lovely down there. And when we were down there, someone had a gender reveal party. Oh, I know, but at least they only had 2 balloons, boy or girl. And there's Miss St. Harrison, whose hair's grown since last night. Anyway, it's time to head back to Matera, but first we need to go and find the car, which we couldn't because we forgot where we'd parked it. It's somewhere up here. Ah, look, there it is, in the distance, and no one's nicked it. It was our last night in this particular cave hotel, thankfully, because a massive group of Americans with annoying kids moved in next door. So it's time to have some lovely delicious pizza, as modelled here by Miss St. Harrison.
Diavolo. Spicy salami.
Delicious, now time to get some rest for lugging that bastard suitcase up some very famous steps. The next morning it was time to pack and leave to head on to our next destination, which was, as I said before, up some very famous stairs. First we need to make sure we've actually not forgotten anything, which we had, a charger. There's me. Now you might recognise these steps when you see them, as Matera was used as Jerusalem in the film The Passion of the Christ, made by our mate Mel Gibson, but more on him later. But yeah, this is where I have to drag up the suitcase, sadly without sign of Syrene's help. Yeah, that'll be me later. Here's Mrs. St. Harrison, who's had a haircut since last night, again, with an interesting fact about the fountain.
They flirted at the water fountain.
Yep, the water fountain's where everyone went to flirt, or just discuss business, or swap chickens, but we're going up there today. And it looks like our one-eyed ginger friend has had quite a night, so he's having a nice little hangover sleep. Not surprised after all that spritz and antipasti he had. Now, next to that church on the top of the rock, naturally there's no graveyard because, well, there's no grass. So people were buried here, as you can clearly see, the markings of where people were stuck under the rock. The place is littered with them. And of course, you have to be respectful and not walk over them like some of the people were, or just sitting there having lunch. Eventually we reached the top of the rock, the Church of St. Mary of Idris, which features some of its original frescoes. Now because of this, they don't allow you taking pictures or videos in there, so using some state-of-the-art techniques, this is the first time people will have seen inside this church unless they've been there themselves. Now the state-of-the-art techniques was my phone in my breast pocket. I wonder if they'll notice. The Church of Santa Maria de Idris dates back to the 15th century and is part of the rock complex that also includes the oldest crypt dedicated to San Giovanni in Monterone. The crypt still has frescoes from the 12th to 17th centuries, and the two churches are next to each other. The name of the temple, Idris, derives from the Greek Odigitria, which means guide of the street or of the water. They need to make their mind up. In Constantinople, which one day we'll take back, the Virgin Mary was so called and venerated, and was introduced to southern Italy by the Byzantine monks. It was at this point I realised I was probably rumbled. He could see. We best leave. We made it to the Church of Purgatory, or if you're Italian, Chiesa del Purgatorio. This was built between 1725 and 1747, and like other purgatory churches, was constructed as a place for people to pray for their souls trapped in limbo between heaven and hell. and it is full of skulls, skeletons and other death related decor. How lovely. There are paintings representing the souls that are stuck in purgatory and other saints, and there's overlaid little decorations as well, with skulls and skeletons just above the doorways, and the pipe organ, which you'll see in a second, goes back to 1755. The place is also full of new modern art as well, however, it isn't shit. However does he get up there? We never found out. Now the front door is divided into 36 wooden squares. Each of them has a skull on. 4 of the skulls are nobles and clergymen, and under those are another 4 skulls representing the normal people. Now, time to give the skeleton a quick good luck rub, so to speak, nothing mucky, before we head off to another one. Now, seeing this Belle dressed up as a Clans member reminded me of something I had for breakfast, something known as a nun's tit, which is essentially a very soft sponge. But it is filled with cream and it is absolutely delicious, so I highly recommend you try a nun's tit, and then straight after that, get in the font and cleanse yourself, you mucky sod. Now what's he putting in that bowl there? Maybe someone's having an operation, or maybe they're making breakfast. Oh no, he's cut her tit off. Lovely painting. No wonder she's keeping her arms crossed in front of Jesus. Amen. It was time to go in search of a drink, but not before we found another cat who clearly didn't want to be stroked. How very miserable. You can't move for good views here, so wherever you stay, you're going to get a sight like this at some point. But anyway, it's time for a drink, and I think we'll have a local beer. And it certainly was a local beer. Local if you lived in Germany. Oh well, never mind. Still, the waitress was a right miserable cow. Just what you need on a hot day in a city full of hills, a puffer jacket. Now, unlike our rubbish vending machines, not only do they sell fags here in vending machines, like the good old days here, you can also get beer for about £1.50. Very nice. Anyway, it's time to get the guns out and carry that bastard suitcase up Jesus steps.
It's only 2,000 steps, you know. Those are more. Oh, Jesus.
How do you feel?
Fat. At least I don't die at the end.
No, you don't.
After having a little rest after lugging that up, we made it, and it was all worth it for this nice little courtyard that we had behind a gate, which you'll see why in a minute, before exploring the old style kitchen and another cave room. Mrs. and Harrison, I don't know what she's doing in there. Some books in foreign too, also known as Italian, and some highbrow magazines. There was no take a break here. On having a little look out through the gate, I noticed something. Not only was it starting to cloud over, which, well, it's kind of an omen for tomorrow, there was also someone over there that was also as dark as a cloud. Oh dear. Thankfully though, the gate was locked. We then decided to visit the Palambaro Lungo, which is the largest of the cisterns in Matera. Now, because it's all built into a cave, this all had to be dug out by hand, and it's about 15 metres deep. It's also humongous and holds about 5 million litres of water. So this was all connected to the surrounding area of Alpiano. So what would happen is people would go to the well at the top, lean their buckets in and get their fresh water. It was used for about 150 years before it became pointless and wasn't used again. Now, it wasn't discovered until 1991 when some divers went in and found some old artefacts from the past, and those marks at the top of the stairs are where 2 buckets, metal ones, were stuck to the top as it was filled with water, and the rust marks were still there. The next morning the weather could only be described in one word: shit. So we decided to head on out to another old ghost town which doesn't have people in or hotels and is really quite creepy. It's the town of Craco. After an hour of windy roads, single lanes and going up mountains, we eventually reached there. It is lovely driving around there, but it would be without the cloud. Eventually we made it, and unsurprisingly we were the only people up there. However, there were other things up there, mainly dogs and the occasional goat. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and this video doesn't really do justice to what it looks like in person. The town of Craco has been empty for about 50 years, mainly due to a landslide and an earthquake, pretty much bringing it all down. Up in that town were houses, a university, a castle, a church and lots of plazas, but now it's just animals. And there's a friendly dog looking after Mrs. St. Harrison. Unfortunately, we can't go in there. One, because it was too wet and dangerous and slippery, and secondly, it's all fenced off. However, people have been in there and you can find them on YouTube. But not me though, I don't break the law. It's nice how the South Italian governments haven't razed it to the ground and turned it into, well, shitty metal buildings with lots of glass. But it's also unlike Matera, they haven't turned it into hotels either, because another landslide or an earthquake is bound to happen. It is very eerie, especially in all that mist and rain that we had. But I'd highly recommend you visit there if you ever go to the south of Italy. But anyway, it started to piss down, so it's time to get back into the car. And what do you do when it starts raining? Well, you go to the beach. Now this beach, unlike the one in Pollinaro Mare, has sand, which is lovely. It's also got loads of boats stuck on the sand too. Now in the south of Italy, we got some looks because we clearly weren't South Italian, and rather than start a petition about how they're all racist, we got in the car and went back to Matera, where unfortunately Mel Gibson's restaurant was shut, so we'll have to go there tomorrow night for our last evening. Let's hope this mist clears for when we're climbing up that hill on the other side tomorrow as well. I ain't going up there in that. I'll slip. After a day of driving around in the rain, it was time for a spritz and some Italian tapas. It was very nice. It was also very cheap. Matera is one of those places where it doesn't matter what the weather's like, it's still absolutely beautiful at all times of day. Anyway, it's time for some sleep for a massive hill climb tomorrow. The next day it was time to head over to the mountain on the other side, well, hill, with all the old caves that haven't been turned into hotels. But now, because of the weather, and it's still pretty bleak as you can see, it wasn't safe to climb up the hill, but we made it anyway. Made it via the car. Now this is the Rupestrian church of San Falcione. Now unfortunately it's closed, so you can't walk around it due to renovations. But there used to be a fresco above the altar depicting Jesus at the temple, which was once legible in Greek and held on a scroll by Anna the prophet. But aside from that, the hill is filled with caves you can go inside, if it's safe. I wonder what's in here. Oh, we got some ledges for candles, somewhere to put your books and your food, if you had them back then, and some rubbish. Clearly some homeless people have been up here, or just inconsiderate tourists. Not me though. Now, one of the benefits of coming up here when the weather's absolutely awful is that there's barely any people around. We only passed 2 German blokes and I don't think they drove up, unlucky for them. Now, because of the high winds, we couldn't go scaling around to look at the other little caves that you can find, because that would be very silly and dangerous, and I don't like to be an idiot abroad. I like to confine my idiot abroad to mispronouncing foreign places. Somewhere beyond that mist is our hotel, lots of cats, and lots of nice restaurants, including Mel Gibson's favourite one, which we'll be going to once we get off this hill. And this is where Jesus was strung up at the end of the Passion of the Christ. Amen. Now, what's inside this cave? Hopefully not loads of old tins on the floor. No, not this time. This time it was just some tissues. I mean, it is very disappointing, but it doesn't take away from the fact you're in one of the most unique places in the world, and one that you should definitely visit, as I've probably said already and will say again before the end of this video. Now, next to these caves, which used to hold travellers on the Appian Way, is the Church of Santa Maria Masulo, also known as Madonna of the Virgin, which used to be open on the last Sunday of May, but not anymore because it's currently under restoration. Now, what's in this big old cave? And there's a hole at the end too. Hopefully there's nothing nasty down there. You know who I mean. Now, one of the good things about staying in caves is when it's windy, your roof's not rattling and you're protected from the elements. Unless the wind is blowing the rain into you, of course, in which case you'll have to hide down this hole. It looks like that safety gate has taken a tumble. That fills you with confidence. I think we'll stay up here. After a while of battering against the wind, it was time to make our way to another place called Gravinia, which is down the road. Well, down the road by about half an hour. So it's time to get back in the car, but not before we ran into a few of our friends on the way. Turns out he didn't want a stroke by then. Now, this is Gravinia, which may look familiar to you, especially when you look at this bridge. Now, obviously we didn't have time for any of that nonsense because we were parked somewhere we shouldn't be. But it's a place we'd definitely like to go back and visit next time, and hopefully next time we find somewhere to park. Here's someone else's footage, as you've probably gathered from the quality. Back to mine, seamless I know. It was almost time to head back, but not for a quick look round the Rupestrean Church of Madonna della Stella, which was unfortunately closed by the time we got there. Oh well, next time. I can't say I'd fancy that job after driving in Italy. It was almost time to head back, but not before we had to drive up the smallest road I have ever driven down with someone up our arse too. Honestly, you had to breathe in just to get between these walls and not scratch the rental car. Honestly, it's an experience driving in Italy. We also came across a man who lives near the bridge and was feeding the local cats. Turns out he looks after 25 of them, and he was telling Mrs. St. Harrison, who understands Italian better than I do, about all the ones that are pregnant. What a nice fella. Good work. we got back to Matera and it looks like someone didn't stop. It was then time to head off to Trattoria Lucana, which is Mel Gibson's favourite restaurant when he was making The Passion of the Christ, and they liked him so much they've even named a dish after him. Which, of course, I had to have, and I can tell you now, it was delicious. Although the waiter there was borderline schizophrenic and quite psychopathic, but nonetheless, he got a tip. After leaving the famous Notices restaurant, we passed the museum to Cultural Marxism. We gave that a miss. We got talking to the chef in that restaurant who was telling us all about Mel Gibson and Monica Bellucci and all the fun they had. He even gave us a souvenir, a postcard of him and our mate himself. Now that's a souvenir. It's going home day, which of course means the mist has cleared and the sun has come out. But what else has come out are 3 crosses up on the hill that we were up yesterday, all in time for Easter. How lovely. But first, it's time to go to another church. And it's San Pietro Barisano, one of the oldest Rupestrian churches in Matera and one of the largest, which has been around since the 12th century. Of course, you're not allowed filming inside, so we had to go undercover, Mr. St. Harrison knows. Now, some of it was built in the 15th century and the 18th century too, and in 1977, someone stole the altarpiece of the Holy Family. Cheeky bastards. It's still got some of the old frescoes of St. Vitus, St. Eustace, St. Augustine, St. Canius, the Annunciation, and Catherine of Alexandria. And because it is the largest Rupestrian church, there are 6 altars as well, all dedicated to our favourite people. But underneath this church is something really quite grim, all down to something they used to do when their favourite people died. Now, if you were a priest or a candidate for ordination and you died, you came down here to the putridarium, where you would be sat dead in one of these little seats, and your body was only removed after you'd fully decomposed and all your fluids had drained out of the body. Now, given how this is underground, and it would have been very hot because they wouldn't have had air conditioning or lights, you can only imagine what the place smelt like and what the floor looked like after all these bodies were decomposing. Now, the point of this special burial was the gradual detachment from life on earth, and the brethren often prayed in the presence of the deceased. So yes, you could sit there whilst your friend or family member was dying and decomposing. It's not quite the same as sitting in a hospital, is it? After scratching we was here in the walls, not really, it was time to get something quickly to eat before heading off back to the airport and saying one last goodbye to this lovely city. It was also time to get rid of the car, which became quite mucky. No, not in that way, but at least there were no scratches somehow. Now, when we got back to Stansted, all the trains were cancelled because UK transport is shit, so we had to get the bus home in the rain. Remember when your family came back off holiday and you were forced to look at 80 photos of Nan and Grandad sitting in the pool and on the beach? Well, settle down for the next few minutes, you've made it this far anyway. Matera is one of those places you have to go to really appreciate just how beautiful it is. Some may think that a load of old cave buildings built on the side of a valley is naff, not very exciting, etc. But those people are dicks. No one walks around London, New York or Dubai for instance and says, "Wow, that's lovely," because metal and glass buildings aren't. They're a fucking eyesore. Matera, like Venice, was built out of necessity and survived for years, and Matera in particular, despite the poverty and risk of disease, was a homogeneous society right until they were all moved out in the 60s. Some do still live there and have moved back. It also had no involvement from the master builders and planners, the Romans. This was normal white Europeans building something to last, and their large hand-dug water systems, alongside their food and ice storage in a region that's either really hot, wet or snowy, shows just how hard they really were. This was all built while certain other societies were still figuring out the wheel, and to this day still can't build a well on their own. But don't forget, they helped build Europe. Okay Tyrone, if you say so. So if you're looking to go somewhere unique on holiday that doesn't have many of them hanging around, do get over there and hire a car too, so you can play wacky races driving around Bari and going to Krakow, Gravina and Polianaro, plus all the other nice places that are around we didn't have time to. It's also very cheap too, which is nice, more so than the crap places outside of Europe that normies like to go to. Anyway, until next time, ta-ta for now. If you enjoyed this video or even the mucky music players we just saw, you can always buy us a Cuppa on Ko-fi. The link is in the description below, and thank you in advance if you do.